So, ceremony part two. Um, yeah, please listen to the first one if you haven't listened to it because it's a necessary preamble. And I talked about the first part of ceremony, which is giving thanks, gratitude, and that just opens us up. That just opens us up to spirit when we do that. We remember. We remember that we are given everything we have, everything that is good. We are given. And then the second part of ceremony that's essential to ceremony is prayer. Um, I used to have someone come and stay at my house years ago who taught me how to do a pipe ceremony in a Navajo style. And she talked about prayer and that was essential to it. And she talked about how amongst the Navajo they'd gather together. It's a community thing. They'd gather together for a prayer ceremony, a pipe ceremony, sorry, in which you have a pipe and you pray to it through that to the Great Spirit. And you'd have everyone there, and it'd be quite informal. It's not holy and solemn in the way that a church is. I mean, of course, there is that respect there. Yeah, there is that sense of the sacred, yeah, and people are, if you like, homing in on that. But normal stuff happens. Kids run in and out. You don't have kids running in and out of church. And the reason is that for Indigenous people, the sacred and the everyday are much more connected. They're the same thing. They don't have a separate thing called the sacred. Yeah. Well, in a way they do. Of course they do, because they have ceremonies, but it's not kind of separate in the way that it is for us. It's an aspect, an integrated aspect. That's the way of putting it, rather than something separate. Yeah. And people would pray for what they want. Having first given thanks, they'd pray for what they want. But again, the prayers would be in an informal way. Some people would go on and on. Some might go on for 3/4 of an hour. They might crack jokes in it. There's humour. They just go round the houses. They talk about everything in their lives. And maybe what they want is their car fixed because they haven't got the money to do it, but they really need it because they need to get to work or something. Because this is on the reservation where, very few people have any money. And so pray for that. And why not? You know, you pray to the Great Spirit to have your car fixed. Prayer is something that's dead practical. Again, because the sacred and the ordinary are not separate. So why shouldn't you get your car fixed? But also, the fact that they feel they can just talk on is another way that reveals another point. Because when you pray, well, first of all, yeah, this is also how I was taught. It's a conversation with the natural world. This is an important point. Someone's messaging me about WhatsApp about prayer. So you might have noticed I keep pausing, but that's the way these things go. Um, so a conversation with the natural world. You're not asking God. You're just letting your heart merge with the heart of the world, yeah? With the heart of the mother, yeah? Because you are her, and she does provide. She takes care of us. In a way, the earth is the Great Spirit. In other ways, she's not. Depends how you want to look at it. You can make these categories, but that's how I'm looking at it. She is the Great Spirit. She does provide everything for us. We are nothing but her. We have this idea that we're a separate human being. It's just how people are. We suffer from this delusion. And prayer takes us away from that delusion. It reminds us that we're connected. And that's why prayer works. So, yeah, it's a conversation. You're asking the Great Mother, please help me with this. Yeah? And because you have the space in the prayers just to talk and to take the time you need, You're not under pressure to come out with something important. Yeah, you can talk around it and let what's in your heart and let what is important there emerge. This is important. We don't always know what's in our heart. We don't know what's necessarily important. We might think we know. I'd like a new car or I'd like that dress. But if you're a woman, yeah, but you might find there's actually something underlying that's actually really important to you. Because often what is important is below the surface. So when you circle around it, when you pray, when you just talk, I say pray. I love that word conversation. When you have this conversation with the natural world, what is important to you can emerge naturally as you talk around it. As you talk around the houses, maybe. Maybe you digress, talk about this and that, crack the odd joke, and then something that really matters to you emerges and out it comes. It has this force to it, has this power to it because there's feeling behind it. And how could that not be answered? This is how prayer works, is that we say something that matters to us, that's in our heart. And that's how it works. Because how could it not be answered? Because when we feel something, we are connected. We are connected to everything. And the Great Spirit, the earth, she feels the power of that. And she is compassionate. She responds, and the prayer will be answered. It's never answered in the way that we think. How could it be? We are these single humans with this tiny sliver of consciousness. And again, this is traditional. Yeah? We have this tiny sliver of individual consciousness. The consciousness of the universe is vast, infinite. So it sees things in a context that we could never see. So how could we know the way that our prayer needs to be answered? We only have this very small idea of what it is we want. And that's genuine and it's real, but it's small. It doesn't have that infinite context. We can never have that. And that keeps us humble. That gives us humility, which is great. So it will be answered, but never in the way you think. And it might even bring a difficulty with it. Because the Great Spirit, if you like, always wants us to learn. There's often a bit of learning comes with it. Maybe something a bit difficult. Maybe something ouchy. Maybe we get the opposite of what we think we want. And that we realize, actually, if we got that, that wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have been good. Yeah. So we never know. All we do know is that passion we feel and what we think it's about. That's about as far as we can go. But we can get close. We can get used to living close to ourselves, particularly if we pray a lot, because a prayer brings us close to what's in our heart. And we can live from that. So we can know what's needed. Yeah. Particularly for other people, we can see sometimes, they need something to help them in that kind of way. So we can pray for others as well. But we don't want to be too specific because we never really know what they want. We don't know what's good for others, but we may know they need help. They may be ill. They may be suffering in some way. We can always pray for help around their suffering. But we don't pray. It might be that they die. That might be the course they're on. Yeah. And who says that's a bad thing? I did a whole thing on death earlier in this series. Who says it's a bad thing? It might be the natural outcome and they're off on the next adventure. But what we can pray for is their suffering and healing around their suffering. And specific things we know that they need, that they maybe said they might need some more income so that they can feed themselves better or whatever it is, yeah. So we can pray for those sorts of things as well. And I think those sorts of prayers are particularly good because they're compassionate. And the Spirit takes particular note of those and helps. When you do things for others, that is a very clear path to Spirit. A lot of power can flow through that. So prayer, in a way, is something that you can be living all the time. I quoted in an earlier video from a book called The Spears of Twilight. This anthropologist who lived with the Achuar in South America in the jungle. And he said for some of them, everything they do is a prayer, which is remarkable. But it means that all the time you're living close to your heart. You're feeling what you're doing. It's imbued with meaning. It's connected to your reason for being alive, your purpose in being alive. If they're living in the jungle, well, they may be, I don't know, maybe they're out collecting some kind of vegetable. And they're doing it so that they can feed their family. And that's a prayer. When you're doing something for others, it's a prayer. Whatever you're doing, even if it's for yourself, it is a kind of prayer. There's an intention there. And if you're doing it in that prayerful mode, you do the things you really need. Yeah. In a way, it hauls you away from any kind of self-destructive behavior. Yeah? Too much alcohol or whatever it is you do, because if you're close to yourself, you know it's not doing you any good. Well, you're not going to pray for that, are you? You end up praying for what's really in your heart. Here's one: is sometimes in the evening I'll have a really hot bath, and that's a bit like a sweat lodge, and it melts me out of my head and into my heart, and that can be quite good. Sometimes in the evening I can feel a little bit empty. Be nice to have a drink. I don't feel that so much these days because I've been off the drink for months now. Yeah, feels a bit more like a poison. But that little hole can open up, and when you feel that hole in you and you want to fill it with something you're addicted to, what you're really needing is feeling. It's that connection with your heart, and that's what a really hot bath will do. It'll connect me to my heart, and that little hole goes. So remember that, and that's what prayer does. It brings you to that place. So it keeps you living whole and in a healthy way. So your whole life can be that kind of prayer. And that's also what we do in ceremony. That is at the heart of the pipe ceremony and the sweat lodge, is these sorts of prayers. And you could argue that whatever form is around that is there to help us come to that point where we actually can pray in a good way, an authentic way, a way that is close to who we are and what we really need. I read a description of a pipe ceremony by someone on Facebook a few years ago. And he's someone who does know a lot about Indigenous ceremonies, and that's great to have that kind of resource around. And he put out a piece on how to do a pipe ceremony. And just to say that in a pipe ceremony, what the essence of it is that you have a stem and a bowl. And between them, they're like male and female. The male and female principles in the universe. The bowl is the female, the stem is the male. And when you put them together, you have wholeness. You have the entire universe. You have the Great Spirit. Yeah? So you keep the pipe and the bowl apart normally, but then you bring them together for the ceremony. And I'll say more about that in the next video. We're going to have a third one as well. Okay, bye for now.